about chicken soup if you're under the weather. Instead, try this Roman umami bomb called Stracciatella soup, essentially an egg drop soup, Italian style. Welcome to Actually Italian. I'm Sal, and I'm on a mission to help you cook authentic regional Italian food. Today we're going to focus on Rome with this very popular soup that's going to make you want to fake a sick day just to get a bowl of the stuff. It all starts with a very rich broth di carne, which is an Italian meat stock. It's a foundation of a lot of soups and stews, and it's the highlight of today's dish. So let's get started right now. Here are all the basics for an Italian brodo di carne. So we have our beef bones here with a lot of that marrow. We want it cut so you can get that marrow, which is going to richen the broth, plus a little bit of meat on it. That's going to add flavor. We also have some stew meat here. I just had in the freezer. This is a little bit of beef cheek, but you can use any kind of stew beef like chuck or short rib, whatever you have basically, but it should be something that you're not going to really use for something else. Same thing goes for the chicken. So I've got these kind of spare bits of chicken. This is from the back. You can see not much meat on there. It's mostly bone. We've got some wings here also with a little bit of extra bone there. I just throw this stuff in the freezer when I don't have much use for it, and then it's going to get another life as a broth. Same thing with vegetables. So you can see here, I just throw all these odd bits in a bag in the freezer. I've got some pieces of fennel here. I've got leek greens, all kinds of like the onion skins, stuff like that can just go in a bag in the freezer and can be used for vegetable, chicken stock, beef stock, whatever you have, and it's free. Then same thing goes for the celery. Instead of using a celery stalk, I'm using the leaves here because they don't really have much use for anything, but they have a lot of really intense celery flavor, so it's going to be great to flavor that stock. We've got some carrots here, and then an onion. I put some clove in there just to make sure it doesn't get lost in the sauce. That's going to add a little bit of flavor too. And then some nice triple concentrated tomato paste. So we're going to throw all this meat into the oven and roast it for about 20 minutes or so. That's going to accomplish two things essentially. It's going to caramelize the bones and the meat on the bone, so that way we have a little bit of extra flavor that's going to really intensify the stock, but it's also going to get rid of some of the fat. So rather than boil it all in the pot and then have to skim the fat later, most of the fat is going to come out in the cooking, in the roasting process, and then it's not going to make its way into the broth. Not that that's a bad thing, but this way it's going to be a little bit of a cleaner broth. So the meat will go into roast, and then we're going to add everything to a stock pot after it's done. I preheated an oven to about 400 degrees, and we're going to put the meat in to roast and brown. Probably take about 20 minutes. Check the meat after about 20 minutes of roasting. You can see it's nicely caramelized. We have some nice brown bits on the bottom of the pan. That's all going to be the flavor for the broth. In a really large sauce pot, we're going to start by browning a little bit of tomato paste. This step you don't really have to do, but I feel like it adds a lot of flavor by kind of concentrating that tomato flavor even more before we put in some water and all the meat and vegetables. I'm going to add the water now. It only took about 30 seconds to kind of caramelize it. So we'll add the water. We'll start adding the meat now too. I'm adding it just one piece at a time right now instead of dumping the whole thing in, because we want to drain some of that fat off of the pan. So I'll do it a little at a time, and then we'll deglaze that tray. You can see all that fat that's in the pan. We're going to drain that off, and then I'm going to add some of the liquid from the soup that's already starting to cook, the broth already cooking right there. It's nice and hot, so it'll make it a little easier to scrape these bits up. So we're just going to scrape all those bits up there, and once we have it all dissolved and almost like a little broth itself, we'll just pour that right back into the saucepan. I'm going to take some parsley stems too. You can see how thick they are. When they're big like that, they're a little woody, but in a soup, they'll do great to add some extra flavor. So we've got the rest of the vegetables in there. I'm going to add a bay leaf, and we'll cover this with water. We want this pot really full because it is going to reduce. We're going to turn the heat down to low, leave it uncovered, and we'll check back in about an hour and see if this needs to be skimmed. So this is just gently boiling now, and it's been going for about, I'd say, a little over an hour at this point, so it still has quite a ways to go. But as you can see, there's not a lot of fat and impurities. This is where you normally would want to start skimming the top because you get like kind of like a, almost like a foam. But since we roasted the meat first, we're not getting a lot of that. So this is fine. So we just leave it uncovered and we're going to let it continue. It's been 2 hours now, a little bit more. We're going to start straining out the stock from all the pieces there. So with just a sieve and a ladle, I'm just going to literally just go through one at a time and slowly strain it out. Don't throw this meat away. We're actually going to use this meat for something else later on. You can see just how tender it is, and even that chicken there, we can put this in ravioli actually, so it's going to serve another purpose later on. After 2 hours, we strained the stock, took all the vegetables and the meat and everything out, and this is what we're left with. So you can see the color is, it's very deep. You can just tell by looking at it that this is going to taste good. You can see there's not even that much fat left on the top. This isn't all of the stock either. This is just some of it. We ended up with probably close to a gallon of stock at the end of the day. So this is all we need. This is just, we have the broth, we've got a fresh egg, we've got some grated parmesan, and we're going to put a little bit of nutmeg in there. That's it. I've got a link to the recipe in the description box below, but essentially the rule of thumb is that it's 1 egg per person. So I'm just making this for myself right now. So we're just going to beat 1 egg to then drop into the soup. Now the egg quality is really important. If you can have your own or get it from a friend or a farmer's market, then that's the best thing. If you can't, then a good organic egg from the supermarket will be good. So we're going to beat this up really well. We want to get this as homogeneous as we can. So we don't have like any bits of white or too much yolk at one point. We want it really even. Another key thing here is that when we put the cheese in, we just want a little bit. We're not trying to make a paste here because we can add more of the cheese into the broth anyway to get that cheesy flavor. But we want this kind of loose. And the reason for that is when we pour this into the broth, we want it to be like ribbony and not end up like scrambled eggs. So you can see it's still a runny egg. It has probably a tablespoon of cheese in there so far, but we're going to add more later. This is about what we're looking for. So we're going to go to the stove now and get this cooked up. We're going to gently heat this broth up, basically just to get it hot enough where it's going to cook the egg, but we do not want this boiling when we put it in. So we're going to bring it up to heat and get to just before a boil, and then I'm going to turn the heat off, and that's when we're going to add the egg. It's just starting to come to a boil. I'm going to shut it off now. Now don't worry about the eggs not cooking because this is hot enough. These eggs are actually going to cook. We don't need to boil this and keep the eggs cooking. Again, we want this ribbons. Now when I put this in, it could end up scrambling. And when you put it in, it could end up scrambling. It doesn't matter. It's going to taste fine. It's going to taste exactly the same. But just visually, it looks a little bit better. The texture also will be a little bit better. What we're going to do is we're just going to gently go back and forth with the spoon. We're not scrambling here. And then I'm going to slowly pour the eggs in. Let me see if I can do this way so you can see. I'm a righty though, but this should work out. So you see, just gently back and forth, slowly pour it in, and you can see that the texture, oh, that looks perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. So it's not broken into little bits. You can see that it's like, and that's how it gets the name, Stracciatella. Stracciatella is basically like torn cloth. So you can see it almost looks like torn cloth. Now we have some cheese in there, so there is some salt, but we didn't salt the broth. So I want to check this for seasoning now. A little salt, a little pepper, And then we want to give a little grate of nutmeg. This is very traditional. This isn't my idea. This is how they do it in Rome. So now let's see how that is. Oh, I'm looking forward to this. This smells awesome. A little bit more salt. That's what we're looking for right there, that kind of texture. Well, we had cheese in the eggs, but I want to add a little bit more because this really is about the Parmesan cheese. So this is when you want to grate your own. Don't get the pre-grated stuff because there's all kinds of other stuff in it. If you get a chunk and grate it, it's going to be nice and fresh and have all the flavor that you're looking for. So we'll get some cheese in there. And also I'm going to put a little olive oil. So this is again when you want to use a good olive oil. This is the kind that you get. You should have two kinds of olive oil. You should have the olive oil extra virgin that you use for cooking. And then you should have the unfiltered, really good stuff for something like this, where we're just putting a little drizzle over the top. We want to really taste that oil. Before I taste it, I'm going to answer some questions that I haven't gotten yet that I know I'm going to get. Like, can you add mushroom to this? Can you add spinach? The answer is yes, you can add whatever you want, but I would really recommend doing it the basic way the first couple of times you make it, because this dish is based on that cucina povera, that really peasant cuisine. From a long time ago, they didn't have a lot of ingredients to put in, so they made it simple but good. Italians now still eat it this way, and they could add prosciutto, they could add whatever. They're not poor anymore, but they still eat it this way because this is how it really tastes good. All right, let's give it a taste. Wow. This is like one of those dishes that just, it has no right to taste as good as it does, because it's just stock, eggs, cheese, little nutmeg, little olive oil. That's it. It's awesome. Now this would be eaten in Rome or anywhere in Italy really as a first course. This isn't substantial enough to be eaten as a meal, even if you eat it with some bread. They would eat it as a first course, and then the second course would be some meat made. A couple of other traditional dishes would be like trippa alla Romana, which is tripe, coda alla vaccinata, which is actually oxtail stewed. So those are the types of things that they would eat for a second course. This would just be like an appetizer basically. Primo piatto. Anyway, I'm gonna finish this because it's just too good not to. So I really hope that you make this dish. I hope you enjoy it, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.